Governor Kate Brown said she had no choice but to move 15 counties into extreme risk to slow the coronavirus. She said it was a matter of saving lives. But our Pat Dooris wanted to know why businesses couldn't stay open for customers who were vaccinated.
Oregon Governor Kate Brown began her weekly news conference by reminding everyone the pandemic is not under control and is surging in Oregon. She noted that the state leads the nation for rate of increase in new cases over the last 2 weeks.
In fact, this is the 5th straight week Oregon has recorded case increases of 20% or more.
And the Oregon Health Authority reported 990 new cases Friday, a sharp increase from the 521 reported on April 1st. Peter Gravin, the lead scientist in the Business Intelligence Unit at OHSU, says their modeling shows in 3 or 4 weeks the virus will lose its ability to spread because of so many people being vaccinated. And in the meantime, he said, restrictions like moving counties into extreme risk will help save 176 lives and avoid 700 people going to the hospital. He later clarified that the lives saved forecast is through the end of the summer. Governor Brown says that forecast is one of the big reasons that she moved 15 counties into the high-risk designation Friday, outlawing indoor dining at restaurants and severely limiting other businesses like gyms. I asked, why not allow the businesses to stay open and simply require customers to prove they've been vaccinated?
I think what I would say is that our vaccine distribution efforts, while fairly effective and efficient, have not been as equitable as I would like. And we are working hard to close the vaccine gaps that exist amongst our communities of color. We've made good progress in the last 4 weeks. However, we still have a lot of vulnerable Oregonians that haven't gotten a vaccine yet. And as you are well aware, Oregon has the fastest growing infection rate in the entire country.
Which seems to suggest it would be unfair to those who are not vaccinated because they could not go into restaurants and gyms until they got their shots. The answer did not make sense to many, including Jason Brandt, the president and CEO of the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, which has many members hurt by the governor's extreme risk order.
Well, I don't really feel like Oregonians got a straight answer, which is unfortunate. We have one of the most diverse industries in the entire state. And so keeping restaurants open helps our underrepresented populations and helps us get further down that track of providing more equity.
Earlier this week, leaders from the Oregon Health Authority said only 3% of virus outbreaks had been linked to the restaurants. But they added there is so much COVID in the state, including the dangerous variants, that it's impossible to say where more than half the infections began. Those counties that are in the extreme risk category will stay there at least until next Thursday. In Northeast Portland, Pat Dooris, KGW News.